Okay, we're continuing with the Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, Pete Rogers, Vladimir Nabokov. We're going in alphabetical order. He's a Russian writer who also wrote in English, and he's most famous because he wrote the book Lolita. He's got a couple quotes here. Satire is a lesson, parody is a game. He lived from 1899 to 1977. Genius is finding the invisible link between things. Okay. A great writer is a storyteller, a teacher, and an enchanter. It is the enchanter that makes him a major writer. I forget who it was. I think it was Solzhenitsyn. He said they only give awards to minor writers because the major writers are seen as, in a way, threatening or something. And I think there's some truth in that. You don't hear about the Soviets giving Solzhenitsyn an award for being a writer. And you look at the USA, who do they give an award to? Like Ray Bradbury. Yeah, Ray Bradbury's a decent writer, but he ain't no Solzhenitsyn. Okay, Vladimir Nabokov. The writer's job is to get the hero up in a tree and throw rocks at him. That's a basic principle of writing a novel, is you have to have conflict, because that sustains reader interest. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins. Okay, that's Vladimir Nabokov. John Nesbitt was a writer. He wrote Megatrends. He said, we are drowning in information but starved for knowledge. And that's a pretty accurate statement about the modern world. Then he said, the most important skill to acquire is learning how to learn. And I'd agree with that. Another way that you can tell that the public grade schools and high schools are an absolute joke is they never teach study skills. I've never in my life met a single person who was taught study skills in grade school or in high school. And it's very, very rare that they teach them in college. I took a class called How to College, and I had a little bit of study skills information in it, but not much. And I've also seen a lot of doctors who flunked their boards. And most of the time, it's not because they're stupid. It's just because they have poor study skills. And they'd gotten by on their brains in the past, but they hadn't really developed the ability. Study skills are super valuable. It's like raising your IQ about 30 points. And some people say, oh, well, we tried that with so-and-so and they didn't do it. The reason why somebody can't learn study skills would be because they don't care. If a person doesn't care, you can't push them up a ladder. But for them simply to want to get better, it's easy to improve. I mean, anybody could do it. You could read a book on memory techniques and your memory will be better. That's just a fact. And if you're not willing to read the book, again, nobody can push you up a ladder. Okay, V.S. Naipaul is an Indian writer. He said, I will say that I am the sum of my books. Men need history. It helps them to have an idea of who they are. I think that's true. I also think everybody should know the history of their family, of their parents, of their grandparents, their uncles, because it gives them a sense of where they came from. And you should also know the stories of your great ancestors, because that inspires you to achieve, makes you think that there's something you could do. I like to hear the history of the great Puerto Rican people, the great Irish people. My grandfather in Puerto Rico was known as a brilliant man. In Ireland, I heard all the stories about the Irish. Okay, we won't go into that now. Here's something funny from V.S. Naipaul. He says, if I read a piece of writing, within 1 or 2 paragraphs, I can tell you whether it was written by a woman or not. And I would actually say that's true. Now, there's some exceptions. You can't tell that with Ayn Rand or with Ann Coulter. They're both geniuses. But everyone says that they're bitches and they hate them, okay? But when somebody writes like a regular woman, you can tell right away. It's sort of this indirect stuff. That's characteristic of female prose. With Ayn Rand and Ann Coulter, it's boom, right in your face. They're magnificent writers. Okay, Ogden Nash. The cow is of the bovine ilk. One end is moo, the other milk. I remember I used to read those. My father got me reading Ogden Nash. He's a fun poet, like a comedic poet, American. Okay, George Jean Nathan. The test of a real comedian is whether you laugh at him before he opens his mouth. And it is true. A lot of the best comedians are just funny looking as well, like Rodney Dangerfield, Sam Kinison. And then the great ones, they act it out, like Eddie Murphy, Anyways, even Dice Clay was funny in his time, his brief window of greatness. Okay, Gerard de Nerval. God is dead, heaven is empty, weep children, you no longer have a father. And that's actually the truth if mankind allows atheistic Darwinism to continue to dominate. He's screwed. Then you're like the baby calf to the farmer. He doesn't care about you. He'll make you into veal. Okay, I hate to say it, but that's what happens if you have atheism. Amando Nervo, he just said, I'm only a spark, make me a fire. Okay, that's a little bit motivating. We'll do one last person here. Otto Neurath, he was like a philosopher and a sociologist. And he did recommend people use more drawings and diagrams for teaching. I think that's a good point. That's why I included him here. He said, it is better to remember a simplified picture than to forget a precise number. I think that's true. It's so much easier to remember a picture. That's one of the reasons why, even though I think some of my earlier books were better written, I didn't know how to draw. So just by having drawings in my later books, that makes them better. The challenge of writing a book with pictures is it's such a pain in the butt to format them all, because you have to be really precise about the formatting. That takes a lot of time. Otto Neurath, he who knows what to omit is the best teacher. Yeah, you only want to convey what will enable the audience to grasp what matters. Okay, that's our quotes for this session. Hope you found that helpful.